Hello, fellow glue sniffers and sprue snippers. Welcome back to FSV Modelworks. I'm Bob, and this is a project from my shelf of shame. Yeah, actually, I do have a shelf of shame. This is AFV Club's 1999 release of the Australian M113A1 fire support vehicle. Kit number is AF35023. I pretty much finished this kit about 15 years ago. I had put everything together, painted, weathered, decaled, the whole works, everything about 8 parts that I had inexplicably left on the sprue. Wanting a break from the tedium of cleaning up all of these tracks from my Mini Art T54 kit, I thought I'd just put on these parts and just paint everything up to match, give it a quick dusting with some pastels and call it good. Well, after looking at it, and this was the original paint job, right there, sorry no before pictures, it's a not bad paint job. After looking at the paint job, which was terrible, and the decals, which AFV Clubs decals at this time were horrible, they were like a scale 3/4 of an inch thick, and there was no way to snug them down. A simple completion project turned into an almost complete strip and repaint. I did not strip the wheels or the tracks, as they were pretty decent, so I'm just going to mask over them. It's a nice build, pretty much out of the box. Individual single links, so they're a pain to put together, but not bad. A lot of sink marks on the track pads. I filled the ones that you can see for the most part, but there's a lot. I found this is kind of common with a lot of M113 kits. So the good thing is, if you use the dust skirts, you only have to be out there with the ones in the front and the ones in the back. The only other thing I actually did to this is I replaced all the tie downs. These are all molded on as solid blobs of plastic, and I replaced all of these just with some fine electrical wire. You know, before you go throwing out extension cords or power cords or that, you know, maybe cut them apart and salvage them for the wire. You get a lot of wire out of one of these. I did have to make one replacement. I did have to replace one of the smoke tubes. I kind of had an accident when I was stripping the paint, so I made a replacement out of a couple of pieces of brass tube. I could have used plastic and a bit of liquefied Tamiya basic putty in the very tip for the dust cover. I still got to put the little teat in. I keep putting little ones in, and I put a little bit of glue in and they just dissolve, so I gotta find something else to do. And aluminum gun barrel, this comes in the kit, and it appears I made a dust cover out of some tissue, I guess, at one time 15 years ago. Don't really remember, but I don't have the original Decals anymore. Not that I would use them, because they are unusably thick, and as far as I know, there's no aftermarket markings for this kit because it's a really bizarre one-off kit. But I have an idea, and it starts with a couple of coats of NATO green. This is my spray booth. It's just like a clothing tub from Walmart. It's clear. The reason why it's clear is because I have some lights mounted on top that shine right through the plastic, so I don't have to mount anything to the inside, and I can take these lights off, and I actually use them for other things in my YouTube channel. It just has a couple of bathroom fans in it I got off of Amazon. I'm using a Badger Renegade Chrome at 15 psi, or about 1 bar. I mixed the Tamiya NATO Green 50/50 with lacquer thinner. This basically makes my base coat also the primer. Move quickly and don't allow the paint to puddle. Lacquer thinner will attack the plastic and damage it if it's allowed to sit for too long. Spray in thin, consistent coats. Depending on humidity, you may have to spray a little closer or further than usual to prevent the paint from drying before it hits the model. Just try to make nice thin passes and build the color in layers. Don't try to cover everything in one pass. And I put dull coat on in the same 50/50 mix, and I used a couple of coats of that as a barrier. Next, I'm going to apply a solution of hairspray that I've decanted and isopropyl alcohol on a 50/50 mix. I'm going for a lot of subtle chips, so I'm going to layer this up. That way areas will show a bit more wear now, but if you put it on too thick at once, it can affect the surface finish. It'll look kind of wavy, or it'll puddle and it'll run. This stuff can be a lot runnier than paint. I painted the model with Tamiya XF white, with Tamiya thinner 50/50, but something went wrong with the paint and I didn't see it till it was dry. It gave a very rough, pebbly finish. I believe the paint was frozen. Okay, this is how I do the chipping. Unfortunately, something's wrong with this Tamiya white. I think it was frozen. It's choosing to be very tenacious to try to chip. The left side, the lower glacis, and the rear have not been done, but I've done the front top glacis, the top, and the right side. So this is how it looks painted up. Don't worry about the texture, a lot of that gets scrubbed off. And then the chipped portion, you can see it unchipped, chipped, and the left side's already done, or sorry, right side's already done. So this side I've already had soaked a little bit with some water. You don't need a lot to do this. Tools, I just use a wide brush, soak on a bunch of water. Hopefully we can do this without me smacking the camera too many times. I usually have my face a lot closer even though I have close-up glasses. And then I just use this beat up old brush. I don't even know if you can tell what the heck it was. Nope, it's pretty much gone. It's just like a little, I don't know, 1/4 inch flat that just wore out, so I just use it for doing stuff like this and stippling. And so what you want to do, start going around, and this is why you put the barrier coat in between your original color and the hairspray. Yeah, this stuff is proving to be pretty tough to chip really easy. Normally that would be coming off in sheets by now. But I have to paint multiple layers of this Tamiya white just to get the stuff to be white instead of light green. That's partly the texture. Something, like I said, I think the paint was frozen. But I've got a new batch now and I just don't want to bother. See stuff starting to come up. I'm not going around in circles on the sides so much as I do on the top and the front and the back. Start peeling through some of this. Oh, there we go. You don't want to do too much. Once it starts, it can start going really quick. So I'm just gonna shut this off for a bit and I'm going to let this soak for about 5 minutes and it should come off a lot easier. After a few minutes the white paint and the hairspray actually started to cooperate, but it was still a real struggle. Hairspray shipping should not be anywhere near this difficult. I was even using, as you can see here, a toothpick to replicate scratches, which you could do normally, but in this case I had to use it almost as a gouge in some cases to get the paint to move. It was stuck on so tight. I just want to make sure I don't overdo it because there is some further weathering to actually happen. And here I'm just painting the smoke tube boots with Vallejo Nero Black. Chipping's done. To be perfectly honest with you, when I saw the textured finish, how that dried with that paint, which is now gone, I've replaced it, I honestly wanted to throw this project in the dumpster. I was so disappointed, but I thought, you know, what the heck, let's see how bad is, and I'm pretty impressed with how it chipped out. It's not what I was envisioning. It's a lot more chipped than I really wanted, but it turned out really nice. And I'm just starting to do some oil wash work on the front glacis and the driver's side. And I'm just using Tamiya panel liner, black, dark brown, light brown, mixing them together to make the appropriate color. For those that are interested, it's 2 drops of black, 1 drop of dark brown, 1 drop of white brown. That's how it worked out. The stencils, before I go on here, the stencils are from an old company called Stencil It. And you can make a whole bunch of different flags in there. You can kind of see some of them. They give you a couple of different styles of stencils for the UN, plus the flags. Sorry I didn't show pictures of any of that. Yeah, they do have a Canadian flag in there too. It just wasn't working in the spray booth. There's a funky one. The turret turned out even better. So that's the turret. I think I'm going to call that puppy done. I might put a few little dusty footprints on it here and there, but all I have left to do is the periscopes. And the maple leaves are from the same Stencil It kit. That one turned out really nice. The other ones, nah, well, not so much because they were sticking up a little bit above. That one turned out not too bad. That one, yeah, iffy. Back one, yeah, even more iffy. That big hinge got in the way. But anyway, I'm going to try and show you guys how I kind of blend this stuff in here. So let me get this set up and we'll give her a whirl. First thing we do is we put a little enamel thinner on the area we want to do here. Try and work in smaller areas and then branch out. Now this will just help flow. I'm just kind of do a bit of a pin wash here and there. I'm using a slightly longer than normal brush, more like a sign painter's brush. It holds a bit more wash and paint and allows for a bit more precision work if you got to dig into nooks and crannies. I'm not being overly neat and tidy because we're going to be manipulating the wash later. Most of this will be taken off. Putting a little bit of clean thinner on here to start blending a little bit. I'm a bit of a slob, so feel free to use tissue, paper towel, or even swabs to manipulate to get to the effect you want. The wash had already started to dry a bit on the front, but it's easily reactivated with some enamel thinner. That's one of the great things with using enamel thinners is enamel products in general is you can usually reactivate most of them and use them at a later date, some hours or even days after. Moving to the side is the same thing. Try and put a little bit more around areas that crew access a bit more, like the hatches, fuel fill areas, stowage boxes, things like that. I don't know what to think. The more I work on this, the more it's really turning out exceptionally well. This is just the same Tamiya panel liner, slightly different mix. 5 drops each of light brown, dark brown, and black. Just slathered on, very technically, and basically allowed to puddle kind of at the bottom and dry and manipulate as needed, and I've hardly had to do that at all on the bottom. But I haven't done the back yet. I wanted to do that in front of you guys because the back's a little bit different from the sides and the front, because the sides and the front have a demarcation line, which is the flotation panels on the sides and the upper and lower glacis plate on the front. I'm not tilting it too far back because it'll end up falling off, but that's what everything looks like. So we kind of have a line that we can adjust where we're going to be dirty and where we're going to be clean, whereas the back, it's kind of, I'm going to kind of make it go up maybe to the top of the tow cable and across, but I want to have some clear spots where the crew would have been rubbing coming in or out. Now, it's pretty simple to do this. I just use some clean thinner, kind of splash the thinner around all over. That's literally, I'm saturating the brush and just transferring it over. I could almost do this with an eyedropper. Now I'm going to the paint. Now, in addition to the paint, or the panel liner, sorry, I also added 10 drops of paint thinner. What I'm going to do is we're just going to let it go. On the sides. And then we go over with clean thinner again. Just kind of pat it on. And this way we can bring some of it up. If there's too much in one place, we can puddle it off and put it somewhere else. Now, it's really hard to see what the effect is going to look like when it's dry. This is going to be really light. This is like 3 different applications. This was 2, and this was about 4. So I might have to do 3 or 4 different applications here until I get the effect that I want. But I'm just going to let this sit for a bit and dry, and we'll get back to it. Okay, let this sit for about 10 minutes or so, and as you can tell, there is very little, if any, thinner puddled on the surface. It's still wet looking. This will dry eventually. You can get different additives to speed this up, but traditionally you just use a hair dryer, just a simple hair dryer on low setting, about 6-8 inches away from whatever it is you're trying to speed up the drying process, and you just use that, and then we can go ahead and put on another layer if we need to. I painted the headlights with Vallejo oily steel. The blackout lights front and back were done with Vallejo NATO black with an overcoat of 50-50 mix of Tamiya clear blue and clear red. And the rear brake lights were done with Vallejo aluminum with a coat of Tamiya clear red on top of that. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm pretty stoked about how well this turned out. Especially after how crappy the Tamiya white paint dried, which I'm pretty sure it was frozen. Being in Canada, that's kind of an occupational hazard. Yeah, this turned out really, really well. The UN markings are kind of a gag. I did this on another build about 25 years ago. I still have it in my collection. I should do a little show and tell on it. It's nowhere near as weathered as this, but it's equally as bizarre, but it's also in a UN Canadian livery colors. Yeah, and this thing's pretty much out of the box, other than my little repair and putting the tie downs down, which really, unless you look close, you probably wouldn't be able to see very well. It's this is an out of the box build. It's just the paint job, and shipping should not have been anywhere near as hard as what it was here. So that's would have been a lot better. Would have been a completely different turnout. So actually, this worked out really well. I forgot to tell you about periscopes. AFV Club specifies to use just blue. They don't tell you what kind of blue, so I just use Vallejo dark sea blue with a couple of coats of Vallejo gloss because my crystal clear solidified because I haven't used it for like 20 years. But anyway, I'm really excited. It turned out really well. Too bad I put the antennas in kind of sloppy, but oh well. I wouldn't enter this in a contest anyway unless it was just for a gag. But anyway, thanks a lot. If you like this kind of stuff, let me know in the comments below. If you got questions about anything, again, in the comments below. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the slideshow.